Up until now, we have learned how Flutter calls up the main function, and within the main function, run app is called, which takes in a widget and makes it a root in the widget tree. Now you might have noticed that we have mentioned the term widget a lot of times. Let us now go deeper into this and understand what exactly is a widget. So to put it simply, a widget is the building block of the user interface components in an app. Using widgets, one can create their own user interface effortlessly. Whatever the user views on a screen of a Flutter app is basically a widget. So whatever you see on an app, for example, if you have an app which is built in Flutter, all the things that you see, starting from an app bar to a navigation bar at the top, say a header image or texts or a list of things, all of these are widgets in Flutter. Say in this particular screen, you see that we have an app bar and we have some text and we have a list. This list has some texts. All of these are individual widgets. In fact, this list has individual list items within it. These too are widgets, and since they are contained inside the list, we call them child widgets. In fact, the entire page here that you see is a widget, and we call it a scaffold. So that places the scaffold widget at the root of the widget tree. Now it is important to know that widget is not only a user component, but it also contains business or programming logic. For example, say a simple button widget will not only contain the visuals of the button, but also the logic to handle a tap or a press event. So make it visually more understandable. You can imagine the Flutter app as a tree-like structure of widgets like you can see on the screen here. So we have the scaffold widget at the root. Inside this we have an app bar widget, a container widget, and the container widget contains a column widget as its child widget, and the column widget contains two text field widgets and a raised button widget. So now that we know what a widget is, and we have explained and understood it in a very theoretical way, why don't we make this more interesting and practical? So let's jump into the coding and see how we call widgets on a screen and how a basic boilerplate of any Flutter file looks like. As we know that Flutter requires a main function in the main.dart file, so we will proceed to create one. Main. And inside main, we will also call the run app function, which we already know that takes a root widget as a parameter inside it. Now, we can see on the terminal here that run app has a problem associated with it, but we will get to it in some time. Now let us define a class which will act as a widget to run inside my app. Now in Dart we define classes like these, so we follow that procedure. So now what we have to do is that we need to make this class a root widget, which would contain all the other child widgets inside it. So to do that, we apply the concept of inheritance and extend this class. Now we have to understand that there are two types of widgets in Flutter: stateless and stateful. What stateless and stateful widgets are, we shall cover that in some other video, but for now, let us focus on stateless widget, which gets shipped from Flutter. So we extend my app to a stateless widget to inherit all the properties of stateless widget inside my app. So now this is how inheritance works. We make a class and extend it from a parent class, in this case stateless widget being the parent class. So we will inherit all of the properties of stateless widget in our myapp class. Now we can see that there is an error happening here because we haven't imported the class before calling it. So let us import the class stateless widget. by using import package flutter / material dot. So this dart file contains the stateless widget, and now since it has been imported, stateless widget is now being read, but run app still requires a root widget within itself. So let us mention my app class, which was designed to act as a root widget, and we are through with the run app error as well. But now it says that there is a missing concrete implementation of stateless widget.build. So what we want to do is that we just don't want to extend the class, but we also want to override the properties of stateless widget. Overriding would allow us to add our own properties inside the class as well. Now, again in the problems window, we can see that the error has not yet gone, and it says that it is expecting a missing and a concrete implementation of stateless widget.build. So a build method is required in our class now, because as you can see, we want to use an object based on the class myApp as a widget, so it can draw something on the screen. Now to do that, it will need to rely on this being drawable. So by defining the build, we enable Flutter to call the build method to draw something on the screen. So we now called the build method. The build method takes an argument known as context, which is an object with some meta information about your app and the position where this widget is drawn in it. And at last, it will return something, as widget always returns another widget in the build. So in this case, let us return material app. So a material app is a special type of widget which is used to wrap your entire app. So once the material app wraps around your entire app, we can use themes, navigator, home, which is named argument, which will finally called the scaffold widget. So now that it returns a material app, we are pretty much ready with everything, and this is what the basic concept of widgets is. So now that we have a basic understanding of how widget works, we will go deeper into this concept in the upcoming videos. Until then, keep fluttering.